So, welcome, Connor. First of all, how are you? How are things? How's the recovery going? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Towards the back end of the rehab now, I've been through this process a few times towards the sort of latter end of my career, so something I'm relatively comfortable with, I guess, if for want of a better word. But yeah, getting back out on the grass and not too far back, not too far away from playing. So as far as rehab goes, I'm probably in a pretty good spot.
Right, yeah, that's really good to hear. I know it was back in sort of October that you were injured, so it's nice to hear that. Obviously, we spoke earlier about how you're getting back on the grass and stuff, which is obviously a huge step up from sort of being, as you say, lying down with a cast on.
Yeah, it was an interesting 2 weeks with two young children, to be honest. The surgeon basically said to me, "Listen, the best thing you can do is go home, lay with your foot up, keep it in the cast, don't get it wet." So there was no, obviously I couldn't sweat or anything like that, so there was no chance of me being able to do anything, even sort of like off feet cardio stuff. So it was different, obviously, from somebody that's moving around every day and probably has done since he was about 3. It was weird, but at the same time, it's a good period of sort of reflection and things like that. So it's been obviously a lot better since then, being able to move around.
Yeah, as you say, two young kids, they're going to be wanting you to sort of jump up and down all the time. But yeah, when things like this happen, it's I guess that's that sort of inner part of you that knows mentally and stuff. You want to get out there and do stuff, but obviously physically you're unable to do so.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, there was a few times. To be fair, I did actually do one workout in the garage when it was absolutely freezing. I thought there's no chance I'm sweating out there, so I'll go throw a bit of weight around for 10 or 15 minutes just to make myself feel better, get myself out of the house. That was pretty much the only time I left the house for 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, how does that affect you sort of mentally then? So you've just said you didn't really leave the house. How is that sort of waking up in the morning knowing that you're not going to be going out doing your sort of day-to-day usual sort of stuff?
Yeah, it was tough. It was definitely tough. I'm quite lucky in terms of like the sort of natural way that my brain works is very much sort of like, right, this has happened. There's not too much we can do about it. Is there any positives that we can take? I don't know if that's a learned behaviour or what, but I'm just very lucky that that's sort of the way my thinking pattern goes, sort of subconsciously, really. So I'm currently in my last year of a sports science degree, so I sort of took that as, right, listen, this is 2 weeks to crack on with as much work as I can, really, and to enjoy being at home, because obviously League One, the schedule's pretty hectic, and with the international stuff as well. Usually sort of September, October, November, I'm out of the house for like a third of that time, basically, and that's just international and not without any away games and things like that. So it was great to be at home. Got like we said earlier, I've got two young children, so as much as they wanted me running around, it was nice to be there anyway, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, if you sort of the positive outlook on life is key to keeping you going, because I know mentally, if you sort of struggle, the battles, it can sort of limit your progress, so to speak.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, obviously, I'm very lucky that I have my family, I've got my wife and my two children. I think if I was a single lad that was younger, with sort of my whole career ahead of me, then maybe it would be a different outlook. I don't think I actually had anything sort of more than a couple of weeks until I was about 27, 28. So by which time I had a family. So I never really had to experience it on my own, if you like, which I think would have thrown up a lot of more issues, because I'm a lot more comfortable with my own skin and with my own mental health at this point in my career now. So maybe earlier on in my career, it might have hit me harder.
Yeah, just briefly then, talk to me about sort of obviously getting injured for your club, or sort of putting you out of contention for your club is one thing, but when you're an international player like yourself, being out of contention for that, would you say that's harder, or is it the same, or is it just sort of a kick in the teeth?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a double whammy, to be fair, because you're missing. I've actually not missed any international games as of yet. I managed to get injured at a half decent time at like sort of the end of the year, but obviously I won't have played much football by the time March rolls around. And a lot of the lads have been playing well and scoring. So the chances of me being in that squad are but probably less so than if I hadn't been injured, if you like. So yeah, I'm sure that'll be a factor come March time. Because obviously I've got to get back fit. It's not just a case of being able to run, it's a case of being able to get match fit. So I can't imagine Derby are going to chuck me straight back in for 90 minutes. So my minutes are probably going to be relatively reduced by the time those fixtures roll around. So I'll probably miss out on that one, which will be a big disappointment.
Yeah, I guess sort of how do you mentally keep yourself going in that respect? Obviously, you've just said then that you almost see it as you're not going to get that much time. You're potentially not going to be in the international squad. How do you deal with that? Because obviously that's a huge blow, and for someone like yourself who just loves playing football, that must be really frustrating.
Yeah, massively. The only way that I've sort of managed to deal with it on a personal level, I'm not sure if this is applicable to everyone or nobody, but it's just taking it day by day and exercise by exercise, to be honest. So in terms of the stuff in the cast, I wanted to do that to the best of my ability, basically, which meant doing nothing. It meant eating the right things. It meant getting as much sleep as possible. It meant keeping my feet up or my foot up as much as I could. And it paid off because I went back to the surgeon and he said, listen, it looks great. The swelling's come down a lot. The inflammation's down. And then I did the same thing with the boot. Basically, I kept it in the boot for, I think it was 4 weeks. But actually, I managed to get out of the boot earlier because everything I did in the gym or up to that point, I just did to the best of my ability, really, whether it be a crappy little banded exercise or an upper body session or a CV session. It was very much like, right, how can I get the most out of this? Because I know that in the long run, it's going to benefit me. So I've just tried to sort of keep that mindset of day by day, really. And I've got so much going on sort of day to day, really, like I say, with the sports science degree and the family stuff. And I'm starting sort of like my coaching journey, if you like, that I haven't had too much time to sort of sit and wallow in it, which I'm sure I would do if I had the time.
Yeah, I mean, I completely relate to you in the sense that you see some of the exercises and you think they're a bit crappy and stuff. I know I'm 11 months and like 10 days on, and my exercise is sitting up and down. So sitting on the bed and then standing up on one leg. And I can tell you now, I hate that exercise with pure passion. It's just repetitive. It's when I sit there and look back and think, oh, I was never someone that ran on the treadmill, but then the week before it happened, I started going on the treadmill. And for me, I thought that was so ironic that I hated it. And then when it come up to it, I did it. And then this happened. I thought, oh, hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm assuming you've probably seen progress in that horrendously boring movement. And that's sort of where I find the motivation, really. If I can do one more rep, or if I can use a black band instead of a blue band, or just always trying to push that next level of, I mean, obviously mine's slightly different to yours and nowhere near as lengthy. I think keeping that positive mental attitude and motivation is probably tough over an 11-month period. I think the longest I've done it is about 4 months with a hamstring. So, and that was tough. So, but yeah, I always just see it as where's the next step for me, basically. What can I do to get the most out of this?
Again, yeah, you say only 4 months, but it's your job, so to speak. So although you're only out for 4 months, again, that's a long period of time for anybody who's just got injured and looking at it. From the outside, it might not seem that much, but that's you out of work. That's with a family potentially. That's you almost feel like a burden, so to speak.
Yeah, you definitely get that sort of at the football club, and obviously at home as well with my wife running around after me. But luckily we've got a great relationship, and she loves looking after me anyway. I think she quite enjoys me being injured, that she can sort of look after me. So, but at the football club, yeah, you definitely. Well, I don't know. Like I say, I don't know if this is a global thing, but I've always felt like you're just a spare part at that point. Like the physios obviously take great care of you, but in terms of the coaching staff, other players and stuff, it's like, well, we know you're injured, but we've got a game on Saturday that we need to win. So that's our priority, sort of thing, which I totally understand, obviously. But it like I say, if you're a young man on his own going into his workplace every day and you're feeling like a spare part, and you're going home and you're feeling like the same thing, I can imagine it's a seriously tough place to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. just sort of going back then. So obviously you got injured last year. I don't know how much detail you can go into, but sort of talk to me about that process of you getting injured and then sort of where you're up to now, sort of that journey in the last sort of 3 to 4 months.
It's just a bit of a freak accident, mate. To be honest, I went to step off the coach and stood on a curb. Like it was just the most innocuous thing ever. But I knew straight away I'd done something like really significant. I've never done an ankle before, so but at the time I sort of knew the pain was absolutely horrendous. I felt like I was going to be sick. Because obviously, if you get injured during a football match, well, you can tell me this to be fair. The adrenaline's obviously pumping anyway, so any pain is sort of dulled down. But because it was, like I say, just a random accident, I didn't have any of that, and I wasn't expecting to get hurt. And I think when you're playing football, there's always an element of your head that you're thinking I could get hurt. Whereas when you're stepping off a bus, you never think that. So, yes, I managed to rupture 2 of the lateral ligaments of my ankle, the ATFL and CFL. And you can usually get by without one of them, but unfortunately, obviously, when you lose 2, there just wasn't going to be enough stability left in my ankle, so I had to get it surgically repaired a couple of weeks later.
Yeah, and how was that sort of? Yes, it wasn't during football. It was something you didn't expect to happen. So, was there any? How did you sort of cope? Sort of when you're lying there in a hospital bed, thinking that you've got to have treatment for this. That on another day you could step off, and the bus is just that little bit further away from the curb, and you don't even. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it was just like the stupidity of the whole situation was like, if I don't laugh about it, I'll end up crying about it. So it was like I say, just the way that my brain works was like after the first probably like 2 or 3 hours of being in ridiculous pain, that on the way home, I was just thinking like, there's literally nothing I can do about this right now other than do whatever I can to get better. Like I know there's a significant injury in there. I can feel it. So I know it's going to be a long road back probably. Obviously you're praying in your head when the scan comes back that it's not as bad as you think. But when that news comes back, it's like, right, well, I knew it was going to be that anyway. So what's the recovery period? How can I sort of compartmentalize it into different little periods of time? And like I say, you almost forget about football for a while, because I think not being involved on the match day for me is mentally the hardest thing by far.
Yeah, obviously you're sort of sat there, whether that's in the stadium or not, watching your teammates play, and especially as a striker, you're watching your other striker potentially score a goal, or just being out on that pitch, not being in contention for that place. I can imagine that. I spoke to a few people, and they say that not necessarily in a horrible way, but they sometimes, especially when they're getting back into it and they're sort of match ready, but because they've been out for so long, they're not getting in the team as much. They're almost wanting that person selfishly to not do as well, so then it gives them that chance to come back in.
Yeah, I'd imagine that was just an element of human nature, to be honest. I think most strikers are pretty self-confident, arrogant, probably bordering on that they think they should be playing every week. I think that's probably more something that maybe I would have felt earlier in my career. I don't feel like I certainly haven't felt like that over this period because I'm so desperate for the team to do well, and Colo, who's been playing, has been doing so well. Those two things obviously tying together. The team's winning, he's scoring goals, so I see that as a great thing all around. And it's my job when I get back to push him basically. And if he's playing really well and scoring goals, then I've got no arguments. So it is what it is. And ultimately, if we get promoted because of that, then fantastic.
Yeah, what's your relationship like with the players in the current squad? Obviously, you don't spend anywhere near as much time with them, but if you are spending time with them, you're there with them majority of most days. You're probably with them more than your own family. So, what's that sort of relationship like when you do get injured?
Yeah, I think obviously everyone's like pretty empathetic with you to start with, because near enough everyone's been there to some extent, whether it be a few weeks, months, years injured. So footballers are great like that. Obviously, rally around each other. We've got a really tight knit group, like you say. We spend so much time together, so And then after that, it's very much just a case of just checking in. You just check in with people, basically. How's it going? How's the rehab? When can we see you out there? Or I'll say, oh, I watched the game. I thought you did this well. Or how was this? Looking forward to the next game, sort of thing. Really, just general chit chat, and then usually you go your separate ways. You head to the physio room, and they head outside. So, but to be fair, at most clubs there's more than one person injured at a time, so there's like those people become your sort of family, if you like. The other lads that are injured, you become even closer to those guys because day in day out you're experiencing the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's the unique thing about sports team or professional sports teams, is that when that player is injured, they're not isolated away from everybody. It's if there's multiple players injured, they're all working, if you like, pushing each other, working together, sort of giving each other encouragement while you're all sort of on the sidelines.
Yeah, definitely. So I've done a few sessions with a few of the other injured lads, who are like maybe similar sort of time periods away from coming back, or even done a few sort of like upper body sessions with Jake Rooney, who unfortunately had an ACL. So he's been out a hell of a lot longer than I have. But yeah, we've managed to tie in a few sessions. So yeah, it's good in that respect, because nobody wants to be injured. I think there's a sort of an old philosophy, if you like, that players aren't really bothered about being injured and like happy to just sort of pick up their money and lay on the treatment table. But I've genuinely never experienced that from anybody in my whole career. So I think the only reason that people get to that level in football is because they've got a ridiculous hunger and drive to play football. So yeah, I've never seen that. So usually people are pushing every single day to get back, whether it be like one day earlier, 1 week earlier. Everybody's usually pushing the boundaries and usually pecking the physio's ear off to get there a bit quicker.
Yeah, I guess is there any sort of fallings out with the physios? Obviously, you also get especially when you get closer and closer to being match fit. Obviously, you want that all clear to say, yeah, put him on the bench or put him in the team and stuff. Do you ever fall out of them when you sit there and go like, I'm ready, and they go like, no, you're not, and you sort of, no, I am. How does that work?
So I would say, like, from doing the sports science degree and just taking a sort of a general interest in like the physio and anatomy side of things, I've sort of erred on the side of like, listen, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. That's his job. My job is to sort of, at this point, is to do what he says, essentially. Because I've played sort of under my own decisions and got injured because of that. I've done that a few times where you're trying to push it for the manager or whatever because he's pulled you and says we need you, and the physio sort of umming and ahhing and saying like, listen, at the end of the day it's your decision, sort of thing. I wouldn't, but I can't stop you from playing. And obviously they're going to err on the side of caution, but obviously that's their job, isn't it? So you can't really knock them for that.
Have you ever had sort of times in your career where you've disagreed with the physio? They may say you're ready to play, or they may say that you're not ready to play, and you've tried to go against them on that, but it's not sort of worked out. And this can be through your whole career.
Yeah. I had quite a big incident at one club where it was sort of contractual issues towards the end of the season, and for some reason or other, the club thought that I was saying that I was injured and didn't want to play because they hadn't offered me a new deal, which just wasn't the case at all. And ended up getting the injury scanned, and it showed that it wasn't all the way healed, and there was still some healing to do. So yeah, that was one example. Trying to think off the top of my head if there's been any others. Listen, I don't know if players might use that as a tool to get what they want, but I didn't really see how doing that would have got me what I wanted, to be honest. So but yeah, I think, like I said to you earlier, that I've never met a player that's happy to sit on the treatment table. So all of those situations are a little bit bizarre to me, and those decisions are usually made by people that aren't necessarily involved in the day-to-day running of the club anyway. So
yeah, I suppose it's got to take a real mental connection with that person, because I know a lot of decisions, this it's not, I don't think it's controversial, but a lot of decisions are made by, if you like, money sort of thing, or not taking the mental side of things into account. They may look fit and they may look ready to play, but as you say, you then go and have that scan and turns out that something that was supposed to have healed hasn't quite, and if you had done what they would have wanted you to do, you would have then got a far worse injury, which would have impacted everybody.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. I've had a few scans that have come back that haven't showed much, and I'm saying, like, listen, there's something there. And I've had to come off in games, and I've had to say, like, listen, I'm not training now because it doesn't feel right. And then I had surgery in the summer, and they found some stuff that needed sorting out, basically, and that got done. And then it's very much like not like a backtrack from the club, but it's almost like, oh, okay, you sort of were being serious. It's like, well, yeah, if you took the time to get to know me as a person, like, you would have understood that from the start. Like, there's no hidden agenda here. I just want to play football. So situations like that are always a bit disappointing and a bit disheartening, I think, as a footballer. And unfortunately, having played sort of 11, 12 years now, I've experienced a few of them.
Yeah, so through your sort of whole career and stuff, obviously you talk about your family being an important part to your life, and obviously friends and stuff. Who, when you're injured, who are the people around you that sort of get you through it? Because I know from personal experience that I've had days where I haven't even been able to get out of bed, or days where I haven't wanted to get out of bed, and it's taken a certain person or people to sort of push me to get out, which I know if they hadn't have done, I would be a bit further back by the day or the week. So just tell me, yeah, if there's a few people, or whoever is there to support you.
My wife, first and foremost. My son, who's just about to turn 6, is obviously a big motivator in general. Just having him run around and him wanting me to get better. Basically, he's always asking if there's anything he can do to help me. My mum, we speak to my mum pretty much every day on the phone. So she's obviously always keen to hear how I'm getting on, and obviously I can have really good, honest, open conversations with her. And then people at the club, to be honest, physios. So usually you work with, like, we're lucky we've got a big medical team here, but we usually work with one physio. So I've been working with one of the guys, and he's been great. Obviously, it can get a bit fractious at times when you're literally together for sort of 6-7 hours a day working directly one-to-one. But he's been absolutely fantastic. We've had no fallouts whatsoever. And then the doc is brilliant as well. So he's always looking to help in any way he can. He's always on the other end of the phone or text or whatever it is. So obviously these people are seasoned professionals who have dealt with a lot of different players, a lot of different personalities, and they're at a club like Derby because they're very good at what they do, and also dealing with the person as well as the injury.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, a club probably would definitely not where it should be in terms of league position, but obviously with that behind the scenes staff that helps push results like this season, hopefully, I know my friend definitely hopes that it's this season that Derby go up, but you don't sort of lose those people no matter where the leagues go. And I suppose they're the most important when it comes to you getting back to doing your job.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think all those sort of support staff are ridiculously important in football, whether it be S&C coaches, nutritionists, sports scientists, physios, therapists, whatever it is. They're the people that keep the club ticking from day to day. The players are responsible for a Saturday and maybe a Tuesday, but near enough everything else is coming from those people. And everybody wants to work in football, don't they? Anybody that's coming through those sort of pathways, everybody wants to work in football, which is obviously goes some way to explaining sort of how criminally underpaid these people are for the service and the job they do. But hopefully that can swing over the next few years. But yeah, like I was saying, like, they're the people that every single day, are propping players up, getting players in, getting players out. And in my opinion, they're the most important people.
Yeah, sort of a slightly different topic then. When you're injured, there's a lot of social media talk, isn't there, when anybody gets injured, and there's always those people, negative and positive, which support you, but also the people that say, oh, like injured again, or oh, typical out sort of thing. How do you deal with the social media aspect of when you're injured? Obviously, yeah, you've not had much experience in being injured in your career, luckily, but for example, now I'm sure that there's been one or two comments that you may have read or not read that have complained about you being injured. How do you mentally cope with that?
I guess I sort of cope with it in the same way that I would cope with sort of general negativity on social media, and it is just to ignore it. Because although there's been a few times, especially with this injury, where you're thinking, because I don't mind people's opinions. Like, people might think I'm terrible at football, they might think this, they might think that, and I've got no issue with that. That's totally up to them. But when it's sort of questioning your injury record and calling you like a crock or whatever it is, you're thinking like, I'm just not that. Like, that is just a wrong. It's not an opinion. It's just a fact that's wrong, basically. So, yeah, I think it's been frustrating at times because, I mean, I sort of came injured, if you like, because my rehab didn't go particularly well at Rotherham. But then I was in the squad from the first game of the season, and then I was in every squad up until I got injured. Like, and it's like, we're not talking like a grade 1 here, a grade 2 there. Like, we're talking like, came off the back of surgery, and then I've had like a catastrophic ankle injury. It's not like I've relentlessly pulled muscles and things like that. So, yeah, I think that's obviously a little bit disappointing when you read things like that, because you don't feel like that's true. But from a mental point of view, obviously, you know that's not true. So it doesn't really affect me too much in that respect.
Yeah, I guess as well, again, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that it's very easy to comment on someone when you're not in that position. I know, like, there's loads of players. Jack Wilshere always springs to mind, the amount of abuse he got online for constantly being injured. But as a couple of people have already said during these podcasts, is that they don't choose to be injured, and they're in this job because they want to work in football. They want to play football. So they're not choosing to not play, and they're not being that person that's, oh, he's injured again. They don't want to be like that, but like they're not doing that themselves.
No, for sure. I mean, throughout all of the scientific research, they still don't know why people get injured. There might be certain predispositions that people have that make them more likely to be injured, but they've not nailed down one thing that says, right, he got injured because of this. It could be like, it's ridiculously multifactorial in terms of what's causing injuries, and they just don't know, basically. So it's always frustrating when you hear he's injured because of this, he's injured because he doesn't look after himself, he's injured because of X, Y, Z. And you're thinking, like, if these people with doctorates can't work it out, then I'm sure Steve off Twitter hasn't got the answer either, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a great name, Steve off Twitter. I'm pretty sure I've seen a couple of Steves, so that's a good way to describe it. Sorry for anybody who is called Steve that doesn't do that. So up to now, sort of where are things moving forward for you now? Obviously, you've had a few months out, and you're getting back onto the pitch again slowly. What's the sort of time frame, if you can say, going forward?
Within the next 4 weeks, I'd say would probably be a decent marker. That would still put me well within where the surgeon thought I would be. So, listen, there's obviously games I've got in mind that I'd really like to play in. The quicker the better, obviously. But I need sort of everything to fall into place perfectly over the next couple of weeks for those things to happen. So obviously we're at the business end of the season now, and there's so many important games for us that I want to get back as quickly as possible, and that's what I'm aiming to do.
How's the relationship with the manager in terms of that? So I assume, like every player, he knows that although they're injured, they want to get back. Do you have a good relationship with him when you're sort of talking about your comeback?
Yeah, so obviously the closer I've got to the comeback, the more he's spoken to me. Obviously, that's just the way football works, because he's got 25 to 30 other people to deal with on a daily basis. He sort of knows that the physios are dealing with me, which I think some players don't like, but it's never really been too much of an issue for me, to be honest. I sort of try and stay out of the way. Basically, just come in, get my rehab done, don't make too much noise, and get off. Obviously, try and impact the dressing room in any positive way that I can, but in terms of what I can affect in the day to day, it's very minimal. So, but yeah, I've got a good relationship with the manager. I played under him previously. So, but now obviously we're speaking a little bit more as I get a bit closer to being back out there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's really good to hear. I know that relationships with players and managers when they're injured, obviously, the closer you get back, as you said, the more the messages start coming in and stuff, because, you know, he signed you because he knew that he wanted you to be part of the team. And obviously, knowing when you're coming back, he's then obviously building that relationship up again for you to have sort of an impact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're relatively short in the striking department as it is with a couple of injuries. So yeah, he's obviously really keen to get as many of us back as quickly as possible.
So sort of one final question, and I've got two actually. The first one's a bit blunt actually, reading it now, but it just says, what does the future hold for Conor Washington?
So I've finished this sports science degree, started my coaching badges. Obviously, I still see myself sort of playing for the next 5 or 6 years, hopefully, all being well. I've been a good rehabber, if you like, and none of the injuries that I've sort of had have played too much of an impact after the initial rehab. So, yeah, I've got nothing that's major that would stop me doing that for the next 5 or 6 years. So, and then just trying to get as many different qualifications as possible, to be honest. I quite enjoy learning, so and I'm not really too sure where I want to go with football, when I finish football. So it's very much a case of just racking up qualifications and then seeing what takes my fancy towards the end of my career, really.
I mean, that's not a bad way to go about it if you just keep doing all these different things, because then, yeah, once you are out of it, you've got all of these different avenues to go down. I think a lot of players maybe aren't as mature as that, in the sense that they look at life after football. I think a lot of players have come out and openly said like they didn't think about their career after football. So it's good that you're able to do that. And as you say, the more qualifications, the better.
Yeah, exactly. I was sort of quite lucky, really, with the way I came into football. I'd been to work, been to uni, so I was sort of like 19, 20. So I had already knew that this wasn't going to be forever. It might have only been for a couple of years. It might have been for 5 years, or I've been lucky enough to sort of play for over 10 now. So, but I've always been sort of keenly aware that it's not going to last forever, and and that I would have a life and a career after football as well.
Yeah, and I suppose the rehab that you do after getting injured here in football, obviously you want that to go as well as possible, because you don't want things to impact you after football. You want to be able to physically do everything that you could before you got into professional football.
Yeah, massively, especially once you have children. Obviously, you don't want to be the 45-year-old dad who can't even jog around a pitch with his son or whatever. So, yeah, you're totally right with that. That I want to come out of football with enough body to get me through the rest of my life, basically.
So the final thing I want to ask, obviously, this podcast is about bridging the gap between professional athletes and people who just do it casually like me, where there's a link between the both of them. So what sort of advice have you got, or however many pieces have you got for people like me who aren't professional in any way, but have got injured or in the same situation as you would as a professional? What advice do you have for them moving forward with their lives, no matter how bad the injury is?
I think the first thing for me would be to seek, obviously, professional help to get a rehab program in place. Because I think obviously doing it on your own through Google and things like that is going to be tough. And at least if you've got somebody to go to and rely on, that's going to give you sound advice on what's good and what's not, then definitely do that. And then I think the only advice I can give people really is what's worked for me. So like I was speaking about earlier, just take it day by day. sort of taking any little wins that you can get. If you get an extra half a rep, or you can lift an extra kilo, or whatever it is from week to week, then celebrate those, because they're the important ones that get you from step to step. Yeah, other than that, I think obviously you need a good network of people for when it's not going right as well. Get as many people around you that are positive influences. Make sure you're sharing how you're feeling, because there's probably going to be a lot of crap moments where you are feeling down, and you're not wanting to talk about it. But I think getting off your chest is always a positive thing. So yeah, they'd probably be my three, to be honest.
Right. Well, yeah, I just want to say once again, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I know for me personally, this has been a really insightful call. So thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.